The information provided in this podcast is educational and not intended to diagnose or treat medical conditions.
Dr. Donnie Wilson struggled for decades to solve her numerous health issues and heal her body. But with focused determination, she healed herself. And in doing so, she discovered the Dr. Donnie Stress Recovery Protocol. On this show, you're going to hear from doctors, nutritionists, and experts, along with Dr. Donnie, who will give practical advice and wisdom to help heal your body. This is how humans heal.
I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Daryl Mesack today. He's a naturopathic doctor of over 20 years. And before that, he practiced as a pharmacist. And he's here today to share about his views from his practice, his clinical practice in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a product that he recently developed. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Mesack.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, actually.
Yeah, it's so much fun I always enjoy getting to talk with a naturopathic doctor, but it so turns out that you and I graduated at the same time in the year 2000. So just to think that we've been practicing in parallel for all of these years, and now we're getting to, learn from each other. So I'm so excited, but tell us more, like what inspired you? Why did you decide to move across the country and study naturopathic medicine, and why are you doing what you do now?
Well, I think naturopathic medicine, same reason you would go into it, is like, okay, seeking truth, seeking reality of, how can I help people, going into pharmacy. And I was more, if you really want to know something about me, it's kind of like how my brain works. Like, how do you fix it? I'm a guy, right? How do you fix things and how things work is I would take things
like a problem solver.
Yeah, I love to tinker on old cars. I fix small engines. If something's broken, my kids just bring it, put it in my workshop, and I end up fixing and repairing it before I throw it away. I love that show, those restorative shows where they fix things. And so when I got to pharmacy school, I loved anatomy, physiology, pharmacokinetics, how things work in the body, kind of crazy, weird stuff, right? But always found it made learning naturopathic medicine easy, because how does the body work? Well, if we do this is how you support it. And so that's what did it, is just how to have a positive impact, help most people. And I just studied on how the body works, which just led me down a rabbit hole of breaking everything down. I've written some articles in Naturopathic Doctor News and Review about bioelectric chemistry and explaining a quantum physics approach that, hey, energy is the same thing as matter. So you and I are matter, which breaks down to heat and electricity. And how do you generate that? And so I wrote an article, how do we modulate the vital force? You remember that concept of, hey, everybody has this vital force, this ability to self-heal, but some of them have a strong vital force and some have a weak vital force. And you just, if someone has a weak vital force, you support it so they can live a long life. And the people who have a strong vital force, they can live a crappy life and still live long, right? And so I explain it a little differently in the aspects of, hey, if you understand the chemistry of the body, because chemistry is what makes us up, you break your body down, it goes back to this earth, which is rock, which is 60% calcium, 24% phosphorus, 12% potassium, 85 trace minerals, make all this other stuff up. And when you look at quantum energy of how to generate energy, it comes down to remineralization. And then, so I discovered the works of Dr. Kerry Reams and his theory of biological ionization, that we are electrical in nature, and how to generate more energy is dependent upon your internal soil, which we've learned, that terrain aspect. And he said the day that you consume more energy than you get from your food is the first day of disease. Makes sense? The total load theory. You remember that one?
Yeah.
I can only handle this much. I get above it. Something's got to give based upon your genetic predisposition and your ability to process that and having it. And so Dr. Reams taught an aspect of how to monitor your own chemistry, looking at sugar regulation, pHs with the speed and efficiency of things. Conductivity gives you the idea of thickness of body fluids. Cell debris is how well the body's turning over and detoxifying. And nitrate monitoring gives us an idea of protein building versus protein breakdown. So you can look at the efficiency of how well the digestive tract and the pancreas and liver and these things are working. And I teach concepts of what I call bioelectric chemistry and restorative health. And we all go down our same paths. And that's the one that I kind of fell upon.
I love it. And I see it from the framework that my mind has because this is a thing with practicing over years, especially I think you and I have this in common, that we look for patterns but amongst our different patients. And we understand that there's going to be some genetic variability, which you're pointing out. There's going to be some uniqueness based on genetics. And then there's going to be some variability based on that person's, what I refer to as their stress exposure, right? Like whether they've had emotional stress or toxins as a stress, or what are the variables of their environmental exposure, essentially. And that's going to impact what you're describing as like the chemistry of how our bodies work. And it's so intriguing to me because even beyond biochemistry, because some of what you're mentioning is sort of the biochemistry of our body, but also you're mentioning the electrical system within our body. And I think that doesn't get a lot of attention. Like, I think we all have to kind of step back for a minute and go, wait a minute, because we usually think of electricity as like we're plugging in our phone, we're plugging in our computer, this is how electricity looks to us. But really what you're saying in pointing out and reminding us is that there's electricity going through our whole body. I mean, one example I like to point out is like the heart, for example. Every time the heart beats, that's electricity causing that to happen. And even every time some fluid moves to and from our cells, that's because of electricity. And so when you start to think about that, you go, whoa, and to think that our bodies are so responsive to our environment because of that, and so it makes it I like how you're also saying not to make it overwhelming, but to feel empowered by it. Like to say, this is so cool. It's like fixing whatever engine or something. Like if we know how the body works, we can tinker here or we can tinker here. And that result of that equation is going to be improved health.
Well, you mentioned equation. And so if you ask 100 naturopaths what equates perfect health, how many answers are you going to get?
Probably everyone is going to answer slightly differently, but.
Right. But when I'm looking at it, mathematically, Dr. Kerry Reams explained the human body by efficiency. And he said, if the chemistry falls into this line, you have perfect efficiency, the line of least resistance, so you maximize the power that can be generated. And so anything that falls away from perfect, that variable that I just discussed, that's the furthest away from it, describes what symptoms. So I can tell people what symptoms they're having without even reading a chart. And when you're mentioning electricity, we do EEG patterns for brain, we do EMG patterns for muscle, we do EKG patterns for heart. It's all electrical impulses, which is what? The influx of sodium and potassium, movement through calcium channels. Minerals dictate how energy moves through our body. And Reams explained this. So what I'm looking at is when from an energy perspective of where those deficiencies lie, because I explain health in two concepts: deficiency or excess. And everyone continued to talk about excess of toxicities based upon environmental exposures. But if your body is set up to be as healthy as possible to adapt homeostatically with whatever it's dealt with, if it doesn't have what it needs because of a deficiency to take care of that excess, then you're going to have some type of disorder. So all these concepts I did a 5-phase approach. Phase 1, clean up your environment, pure air, pure food, pure water, EMF protection, protect yourself from the craziness. Phase 2, test. What are you specifically reacting to and remove it? Are you reacting to pesticides? Are you reacting to mold? Are you reacting to heavy metals? Are you food sensitivities? It's foundational in naturopathic medicine. Phase 3, support. What do you need? Not do I take everything known to mankind for the adrenal glands or the thyroid? What is my body deficient in that it has to have in order to process the load that's put upon it? And so if you do that, if you lower your total load, you reduce your food and identify what your body needs specifically to deal with your burdens, and you start supporting your body, you effectively raise your threshold and your body naturally starts to detoxify. That's phase 4. And supporting
Okay.
detoxification. And phase 5 is self-awareness. That aspect of mental, emotional, knowing where things are. Because if you're not aware that something's not right in my body, even if you're taking an analytical approach, it gives you that stimulus to go and say, okay, I know something's not right, and everything in this world is based upon cause and effect. How do I find that cause?
Yeah.
Because if you remove the cause, you've got your cure. So when we're talking energy, I mean, the geniuses of the world, Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, you have to think in terms of frequency and vibration. Einstein explained the theory of relativity, and everything is relative, math-wise or whatever else. And so I'm to my knowledge, this naturopath who takes these concepts and say, look, this is all real, and this is how we can do it. And then you bring into telomeres, and the studies of telomeres and the aspects of anti-aging. And that's what we're supposed to be talking about my product, Vi-telometry.
We're going to get there. I can't wait. But let's make sure, because first off, thank you so much for talking that through, because you've said a lot in that. You've really showed us how the principles of naturopathic medicine really you've matched that up with the principles of science, and with your chemistry background. I can hear that chemistry background from that probably led you to practicing pharmacy. But I also have background in chemistry, so I love that, because you can break down all of this to the specifics of chemistry and science and say, hey, this isn't just mumbo jumbo, sounds good. This is actually math and chemistry that we can understand about our bodies to solve for health. I call it, we solve for health. We solve this equation for health, and it's unique for each person. But one of the things that I want to, just before we talk about telomeres, mention is that one key difference is in naturopathic medicine, we look at the body as a whole. And so one of the concepts what you're explaining is that you're looking at the body as a whole. We're not looking at the body with this part, this system is separate from this system. No, it's that the body is functioning as a whole. And we have to look at it that way in order to even solve that equation. Would you say?
Right. Oh, totally. You remember Dr. Jared Zeff, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so and they were looking at bringing that classical Chinese medicine program into National College of Naturopathic Medicine, they were like, how do we teach this to be different than everything else? And Dr. Zeff walks up to the board and does this great big circle on the board. And he goes, classical Chinese medicine. He puts a dot in the center of it and says, traditional Chinese medicine. You can look at it the same way. Draw a circle that encompasses the whole body and the efficiency of what the body's capable of doing. And then you can put a dot. Here's the thyroid. Here's the liver. Here's the adrenal glands. Here's the parathyroid. Here's the pancreas. You know what I mean? How do I support this? Because that's where my symptoms lie. No, when you fix the chemistry, because chemistry dictates energy efficiency, the body self-restores. And so that's the whole principle. It was just the most beautiful presentation of naturopathic philosophy summed up. And the day that you consume more energy than you get from your food is the first day of disease. I'm like, okay, I got to learn about this stuff.
Well, and I think with that concept, I love that, because it really shows that it's a matter of us learning. You use the word homeostasis. How do we feed ourselves and interact in our environment, including sleep and drink, water and minerals? How do we do that in such a way that we can kind of stay in this perfect spot? And it's like you're saying, if you have an excess of food or an excess of anything that tips you this direction, or a depletion that tips you this direction, no longer is the body going to be working optimally. And that's when we start seeing all different kinds of health issues develop. So that's really talking about it from like a environmental, sort of what happens, how do we survive in this world as humans, considering all the variables we're exposed to. But at the same time, we're also influenced by our genes. Yeah. And this is where the telomeres come in, because the telomeres are part of our genes. So let's talk about that. We know that stress exposure of various types affects these telomeres, and the telomeres have some determination of our longevity. But tell me your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, in 2009, the Nobel Prize for Medicine was won by 3 physiologists who discovered the enzyme telomerase, and that because as telomeres, as they shorten, we age, period. And they're at the end of our DNA, at the end of chromosomes, and as they shorten, the aging process starts, and telomeres are responsible for the reproduction of cells. And so what we know with telomere research is that, childhood stress can make you die and shorten your telomeres. Your day-to-day anxieties can cause those. So meditation itself has been shown to increase longevity by taking that stress off your telomeres. And then there's certain nutrients and vitamins that have been shown to benefit telomeres just because the presence of them being there, particularly minerals, I must say, because if you start looking at some of the real genetic work, they're finding that most of the times that the genetic pathways are broken and being exposed can be trace mineral deficiencies, and its efficiency of how it's used. And I can explain how chemistry, the speed of that chemistry, is what allows specific nutrients to be available. So if your pHs are all off, you can take all the zinc you want, but if your pH is at 5.3, you're not going to utilize that zinc. Yeah. And so when you're looking at telomeres, I started looking at that and that research and saying this is the greatest anti-aging discovery ever. Those Nobel Prize winners took prematurely aged mice expected to be in their 90s that were blind, that were arthritic, that were their hair was white. They mentally could not go through mazes. And then they stimulated that enzyme. They reverse aged these mice. They became dark. They got age, they could run through the mazes. They took their brains out. Their brains increased 25% in size. Their cataracts cleared up. Their renal failure went away. Total reverse engineered, reverse aged rather. And so, I'm like, oh my God, how do you do this? How do you stimulate telomerase activity? So I did a Google search of about 200 abstracts through environmental health perspectives, and just started flipping through the abstracts and started noticing all these natural products: milk thistle, cynomorium, ginkgo, purslane, and I'm like, so I started looking at all these herbs, and then what does that come? That naturopathic side of me says, wait a minute, why don't I get herbs that all have telomerase activity, but formulate them in an eclectic blend to take care of how the body works? So milk thistle, all of these, milk thistle has, we always think of it as hepatoprotective, protect the liver. The liver has to deal with the stress. Ginkgo, wow, let's improve circulation. Elderberry, wow, let's improve our immune system and have antioxidant activity. Green tea, strongest antioxidants known to mankind, anti-cancer, whatever else. What else? Astragalus. Astragalus has historically been used for adaptogenic. Let's support those adrenal glands. Let's support the immune system. And specific extracts in it, cycloastragenol and astragaloside 4, have been shown to have telomerase activity. Purslane, that weed that people is ripping up, greatest source of essential fatty acids known as a plant source. But what are you doing? You're affecting the ability of nutrients to go across cell membranes, because all of our cells are basically made of fat, and our brain is healthy fats, and then that bioelectric concept says, hey, put some calcium in there, because calcium regulates all the minerals and the movement of minerals across the cell membranes. I put cynomorium in there. Cynomorium's a yang tonic, elixir of life, sexual vitality elixir without making people feel like jittery, and then I put lemon, because lemon is an anionic surfactant. It's like Dawn takes grease out of your way, that anionic soap dispersing that cationic clumping of grease. Lemon comes in and disperses, and plus it has vitamin C, antioxidant activity, and stuff like that. I mix this stuff up. Why? Because I did compounding pharmacy at Lloyd Center Pharmacy for 5 years while I was at.
I love Lloyd Pharmacy. Oh my gosh, it was the biggest treat, by the way, whenever I was in this is in Portland, Oregon, for those of you who are listening. And I grew up in the Northwest, in Portland and Seattle. And so I know of Lloyd Center Pharmacy, which is a well-known compounding pharmacy in that area. What a treat. I don't know, one day, or maybe even for a week, I went and just interned there because it's so fascinating to think of the creativity. Like you wouldn't think of pharmacists as creative. I don't think most people think of pharmacists as creative. But when you go to a compounding pharmacy, you see pharmacists as artists, and they are creating formulas with nutrients, with hormones, with you name it. And it's just fascinating. So I'm so excited to know that you worked there and trained there as a compounding pharmacist. So no wonder you already were ready to create your own formula.
Yeah, I just came out with a pet formula, and I'm calling it canine telemetry based upon this, and because it kept my dog alive for an extra 2 years, and just amazing story. Oh. But Lloyd Center Pharmacy was just a treat. I have to say, when I started working there, we did about 10 to 12 compounds a day. When I left, we were doing over 60. And all of those nutritional lines that they carried, if you ever went into the pharmacy and they had all of those, somebody had an influence.
Had a little bit of influence in there.
That was me. I was like, hey, if we're going to carry this stuff, you need to have this and make it available. And so we started serving the naturopathic community. If you go back and look, it was between late 90s. And that's because I started working there in 1995 through the year 2000.
Something a lot of people don't know is that too much stress can actually create an abundance of health problems like high blood pressure, high blood sugar, anxiety, migraines, insomnia, even fertility issues. This is because high stress puts your adrenal glands on overload. They release cortisol and adrenaline, which controls your digestion, hormones, immune system, energy, focus, and even your emotional response. So how can you beat stress when you don't know where to start? That's why we have a free 7-day stress reset program. It's designed to help support weight loss, digestive healing, and hormone balancing. It includes support for integrating self-care, daily tips come to you by email and video, gluten-free, dairy-free meal plans, as well as grocery shopping lists, journal pages, and more. This free program will help you beat stress and put you on the path to wholeness in your body. Get your plan now for free at drdonnie.com.
And so, use that compounding. So I started mixing up these herbs and ratios and stuff like that to make them fit in capsules. And I knew how to make all that stuff from compounding for so many years. And I started taking them and be like, oh my God, is this really happening? So then, of course, what do? I ask my clients, would you like to do this? And they're like, Dr. Mesack, you want me to be an experiment? I'm like, kind of, sort of, I'll give you some. And every one of them came back like, can I have more, please?
Then that was a good trial set. But I think this is so exciting. Your product, which is, and I was saying to you, I love your creativity with the name too, because you have the word vital in here. Vital, again, back to that, what you talked about earlier on, just that vital energy that we all have, and tying that together with this concept of telometry, which is being able to restore our telomeres to be anti-aging. And I love that what I heard as you were describing, what you're describing is the herbs and ingredients you ended up putting into this product, the Vi-telometry. And the way I hear it is that you chose herbs. I mean, I think all herbs are really what I call multitaskers. They can do more than one thing. So these ingredients help with the telomeres, but they also help with all these other systems at the same time. And so it's so fun, I think, to think of taking something that can act in more than one way. I mean, like with pharmaceuticals, even then, sometimes they work in more than one way, but we tend to use them with one purpose. I'm going to take this pill for this purpose. And that's one thing that's different about this formula is you're taking a pill, but it's multitasking in positive ways.
We've had tremendous positive reports from majority of people. It's energy and focus. It's like, it's better. I stopped buying my coffee in the morning because this product got rid of it. But we've had people have their hair grow in dark again. Hasn't worked for me yet. We've had people have their hair grow back in. We've had people reporting their sex life returning in their 70s. We've had people talking about chronic fatigue, just like, oh my God, changing their life. Because you got to realize the immune response of what you're doing by using the astragalus and the elderberry, and just I just think about it conceptually of what you're doing, improving the communication of cells with the essential fats, improving circulation, improving detoxification with the liver and antioxidant nature, improving cellular energy control by providing the calcium and the regulation of mineral movement across the cell membranes. I mean, that's how I think, and it's just, and what it translates into is people just feel good on the product. Initially we were having like a 60% reorder rate. It's just incredible, the people who try it and say, oh my God, this is a great product. So, and because, being on the show, what we'll do for anybody who listens and does your show, we'll use a discount code Donnie, DONI. Okay. Anybody who wants to try it can get 10% off from trying the product.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, and do you expect that do people tend to see a difference within, say, a month, or what period of time? Well,
the reason I sent you a bottle is because I was expecting you to have experienced a difference by the time this show, because normally it's within 1 to 3 days. If you go to our website, which I got a website called Doc Mesack, docmesack.com. I do YouTube shows that teach people how to equip themselves to test themselves at home. All my articles on Naturopathic Doctor News and Review are on there. I've done podcasts, but also there's a link to Vi-telometry, which is Vi-telometry.com. Just a lot of people spell it wrong. They use VITAL versus VITEL. So it's VITELOMETRY. But if you go to Vi-telometry.com, there's a video by Kathy Ireland, third-party endorsement there, and stuff like that just shows, tells the history of it and stuff like that. It's just, it's turning out that people, and there's a testimony on that video of a lady's like, the very first day I could feel a difference. And most people report that within 1 to 3 days, like, wow, is this real? That's why I had to convince myself by giving it to my clients.
Well, and thank you so much for sending. I'm definitely going to try it, and I can't wait to give you my feedback. And would you say, I mean, is there anything you could think of a person who shouldn't take this product? I mean, I'm thinking through the herbs that I know of in here, and these are common herbs we use: elderberry, ginkgo, astragalus. But tell me, is there any that you've identified that should be careful with this product?
Well, I used to do, being a pharmacist, I used to do lectures to nurse practitioners and physician assistants on drug nutrient herbal interactions. It's the good, being the pharmacist and the naturopath, right?
That's your thing, yes.
And that was huge. There was nothing about that when we were graduating. All that information was just starting. And so here's a naturopath coming out and say, look, we give drugs that we know interact all the time, but we monitor to look for that interaction and make sure that it's not life-threatening, right? And so when you consider what's in here, ginkgo, you could take up to 12 of these a day, to maximize out on a dosing of anything. So the amount of ginkgo that's in there is still enough to improve circulation, but ginkgo has that anti-platelet activity, it inhibits platelet activating factor. So if somebody is on Equates or warfarin, the blood thinners, it would be the same concern as somebody who would take an aspirin with those things. What they commonly will prescribe together. Hey, take your aspirin a day, but while you're on Equates or while you're on these things. So people should be aware. If they're going to take it, look for bruising. First sign, do a bleeding time, prick your finger and keep wiping it off and time how long it takes to clot off naturally. If your bleeding time exceeds 30 seconds, then hey, your blood's probably a little too thin. It's a simple test, instead of doing an INR and those other blood tests we do. But other than that, no, I have seen with people's chemistry that I'm testing that in general, I see an enhancement of how people feel and the efficiency of their chemistry by taking this product. Like I said, it's formulated, that you could take up to 12, but most people would not be able to afford it. And I've only had a couple who do it and say, oh my God, my energy's off the rocket. But I formulated it to put 120 in a bottle so you could take 4 a day. Either take 4 all at once in the morning or take 2 at morning and 2 at lunch. Some people say, hey, my energy's too much, and they decrease. I have some elderly people who only need 1 a day, but I personally, I take between 4 and 8. I'll take 4 in the morning. And if I have one of those days where I stayed up too late and I didn't get enough sleep and I'm just running, I'll take 4 more, and just gets me through my afternoon. So, it varies again, because naturopathic medicine is variable based upon what somebody needs, based upon the efficiency of what they're already doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I love that we talked through everything earlier, because now we can see how this fits into that same equation, knowing how depleted are you, how much restoration does your body and your telomeres need. And that might, even day to day, like you're saying, like if you have a particularly stressful week, then you might need more. And that's part of that, like you talked about that kind of like phase 5 or stage 5, where a person's becoming more self-aware. And I really love that concept, because, and it's even just what you're referring to as knowing, hey, am I bruising? Like getting in connection with your own body, instead of necessarily always relying on an outside practitioner or going to the doctor's office. You can know your body within yourself, and to know, hey, if I didn't get enough sleep, maybe I need a little bit more support today. And then as you, of course, you still needed, we want you to get good sleep and eat good food and do your meditation or other stress reducing activities. So do all of that. And then as you're doing that supportive self-care, then maybe you only use a little bit of this, depending. What I'm also curious about, you mentioned some different health conditions. Like I would think, especially if a person has fatigue, this would be top on the list, in addition to, of course, addressing if you have anemia or some other cause for the fatigue,
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
But is there?
The other thing is even in today's COVID concerns, why don't you talk about astragalus, elderberry, and green tea during these concerns?
Oh my gosh, they're all immune supportive. The studies on astragalus alone are really mind-blowing. And these herbs that you've chosen are not sort of recent herbs. These are like traditional herbs that were even used in Chinese medicine for I don't even know how many thousands of years. Yep. So these are herbs that were used way back when, but now we actually have the studies to show why they were being used in terms of, say, anti-aging, but also in terms of immune support. If astragalus, one of the best herbs for helping our immune system to be protecting us from viruses, for example, even just for that reason, it's a good thing to take.
Viruses, adaptogenic for the adrenals. It goes on. I was really pleased with the product and how it turned out, and that's why my best story. Now I made it for a horse, and this 24-year-old horse is starting to walk better. And now they're like, can you make us a batch of, so I made the product for my dog, because I had a 13-year-old lab, cataracts, starting to lose bladder control, difficulty, couldn't get up and down the stairs. I turned this product into, mixed it with some collagen and put it on her food every day. And next thing you know, I didn't even mix it with collagen with my dog.
I opened the capsule, basically.
Yeah, just put it. I took the purslane out because dogs can't tolerate oxalates.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Okay, so that's the change you have. So don't use this for your animals. You got to get the dog version.
Right. So and then I put collagen in it. And so, but every dog that's taken it is like starting to act like a puppy, spinning around. My dog, her cataracts got better. She could walk up and down the stores. She regained bladder control. She ended up living 2 more years. She lived to be a 15-year-old lab, purebred. And our vet was like, I've never seen a 15-year-old purebred lab.
That's amazing.
Because we never took her to the vet. They didn't have to. That's
amazing. That's really amazing. I'm an animal lover too. And so I can't wait to also try it. Can I use it on cats too? Do you know?
You should be able to. People get worried. I did because of the lemon. So lemon has psoralins in it, but it's only found in the rind. And so if you look at the ingredients, we have lemon juice. So lemon juice extract. So lemon juice doesn't have sorolins. Don't you love all that chemistry stuff? And sorolins are toxic to dogs and cats. And so, but yes, it should be fine. I just haven't tried it on a cat because cats are finicky. Dogs, they lick this thing up. And this horse that we started experimenting with, it always had to have its food brought to it. Now it's changed its eating pattern. And for the first time in over 5 years, the horse has ran twice.
Wow.
It's a 24-year-old horse. And they're like, okay, let's make some more of this and let's see. So right now we're looking at possibly making it into a horse-based product as well. Never imagined naturopathic medicine would lead me down the backside vet support, but.
Well, and that's the thing. It just shows us, I mean, animals, they have a lot of similar physiology to us. And, that if we make a few tweaks to make sure we don't, they don't get the wrong ingredients, I'll definitely be happy to test it out on my cats and give you feedback. I'm wondering, so along with this, what would you say a person like you would in your office, because you see people in your office too, right? You see patients. Do you see everyone in person or also virtually, or?
Mostly in person, because I do live blood microscopy. I test people's blood. Everything's analytical. Let's look at the health of the blood and look at where, are we showing signs of maldigestion, immune imbalance, deficiencies with iron, B12, folate. You can see activated activated lymphocytes and suggestive of mold and other exposures. I do electrodermal testing, again, electrically or analytically measuring a response against products for food sensitivities. You remember EAB, probably about 80 to 90% is accurate as doing some type of immune-based testing. But for me, everything's energy. Everything is frequency and vibration. So I'm measuring these things. I'm looking at the results on somebody's blood on a microscope. I look at dry layers and things, and then I look at the chemistry and say, hey, this is what you need based upon your chemistry efficiency. So, and it works. I don't even have to, I can look at the chemistry, not look at somebody's intake form at all, and based upon the chemistry say, you probably have these symptoms and predict exactly what's going on. And people are like, oh my God, I didn't even tell you about my shoulder hurting and it, because the chemistry shows where the energy is being drawn from in the body. It's just a beautiful thing.
Wow, that's awesome. So then each person who you might work with individually, they might have an individual plan, like make these dietary changes, maybe add these, I'm imagining, minerals or electrolytes, and, address these different systems. And then in addition, you would have them use the Vi-telometry as a restorative formula.
Right. The whole idea is certain foods. See, foods move your chemistry. Remember how you have alkaline and acid-based foods, But that's based upon the calcium forms that are in that food. Calcium is a predeterminer of primarily a pH. So if people have high pHs, you eat foods that are primarily have calcium lactate, calcium phosphate, that gypsum and stuff, that'll move the pH down. Whereas if people are acid, which most are, we put them in the DE range. Their chemistry is moving too fast. So you use calcium oxide and calcium hydroxide and calcium citrate and calciums that slow the chemistry down and move the pH up. So what I do is teach people to test their urine pH, and then based upon where that urine pH is on a range, you either eat this range or you eat this range. Move the chemistry down, move the chemistry up. But when it gets in the middle in the healing range, now you can eat any of those foods. But you need to observe if this food drastically slows you down because you're susceptible to it, then, hey, mix it with this food that speeds it up. So you're balancing out your chemistry and you learn to match your foods based upon your chemistry efficiency. You just got to check your urine pH consistently.
It's so awesome. And again, you're using, this concept of helping people to understand how far out of range are you? Are you too high, too low, and then to observe how your body responds, which is so unique. Different people need different tweaks and different doses to get them back realigned again. And then to what I call resiliency, being able to maintain, you learn through the process. So then you just know your body. We don't come with a instruction manual. So going through this process is almost like you giving people their instruction manual. Here's how to keep your body in balance, how to eat, what to do, what to take to keep your body in balance.
And over time, self-awareness is you learn what it feels like when your chemistry is in a particular pattern, and you learn what foods I need to eat. Or, hey, if I eat that food, I'm going to feel like crap. So I need to do this so I get better quicker. You know, hey, I'm going to be at the party. I know I'm going to cheat. So, hey, why don't I take some extra vitamin D? I'll take an extra calcium carbonate or citrate, and I'll go to the party. I'll eat my crap, but I know that I'll restore a little bit quicker. It's like you going out and drinking too much and taking Nux Vomica before you go to bed, right?
The homeopathic remedy, it definitely. Oh my goodness, yeah, and too much for me is not very much. I always, learned so much from my body, and to feel grateful for. I can hear you've learned a lot from your body and your patients and your pets. That's the I think the amazing thing. I feel so grateful for this opportunity to be a naturopathic doctor and to get to learn more about our bodies and how to be healthy all the time. I'm sure you feel that way too.
Always.
Yeah, I can hear that from you. And I've seen, I don't know that you mentioned it earlier, but if people would like to listen to more from you or your videos on YouTube as well.
Yes, Doc Mesack, DOCMISAK is my channel on YouTube. We're actually looking into using another platform that's not censored. Unfortunately, naturopathic medicine seems to be a little censored on YouTube. And so, but in the meantime, Doc Mesack, we have all that. If you go to docmesack.com, there's links to everything from my practice to Vi-telometry. That new canine product's not going to come out until January. It'll be out next month. Just a lot of things happening. It's all good.
So exciting. And oh my gosh, how much fun to get to talk with you. I really appreciate you being here and sharing with us. And I look forward to staying in touch with you.
I can't wait to hear your response from trying that product. Email me and let me know.
I will definitely let you know, and I'll let everyone else know too, so that they can get a sense of it, because just to think, all you did was to think, hey, we need to support telomeres. Let me go find out what can do that and put it all into one formula. But it doesn't exist anywhere else. I've never seen a formula like this anywhere else. So thank you for creating it.
Yep. Hey, again, anybody wants to try, have them use Donnie, DONI, as a discount code. They'll get the 10% off. And thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thanks for listening to How Humans Heal. If you liked this episode, leave a rating and a review. And for more resources, visit drdonnie.com.